right, hello everyone. Good morning. Welcome to our third webinar in the Navigating Dataiku with Compass series. My name's Ethan, and today we're going to be talking about data preparation and recipes. So, a little bit about Compass Analytics before we start. We're an analytics consulting firm based in Montreal, and we really do everything related to data, from data transformation and strategy planning, data engineering, data science, AI, ML, application development, and dashboarding. And here at Compass, we believe in being teachers first, and we're also a proud Dataiku partner in Canada. So with that said, we're really doing this webinar series to showcase the amazing data capabilities and solutions that Dataiku has to offer. Now I'll introduce the team. William Chan is one of our managing partners at Compass with over 10 years of experience doing data analytics and transformation. He's not here today, but he will be at the next webinar series, so you can hear him talk then. And my name's Ethan. I'm an AI consultant at Compass and based in Montreal. I have a background in analytics, math, and computer science, and over 5 years experience building AI and ML models across many industries, including health, pharma, CPG. And I also have about 1 year experience working on Dataiku. And as a data science and practitioner, it really is my preferred platform for all things data science related. So I'm really excited to share with you all today. Now, jumping into the presentation, what we're going to be talking about today on the agenda, we'll do a brief intro for anyone new into what is Dataiku. Then we'll look at what are recipes, and then we'll actually go into the different types of recipes, so visual, code, and LLM recipes. So starting off, why should you use Dataiku, and where does it really sit within your enterprise? Well, it's really the best AI and ML engine that gets you from your silver layer data to your gold layer data. And this, of course, comes after you've built your data engineering pipelines from bronze to silver. Then Dataiku comes in, makes it easy to connect all of that data. And from there, Dataiku really excels at performing any last-like ETL and data prep before building and deploying your AI and machine learning models and applications. And all of this is done in just one platform with centralized governance. And then finally, the output of your AI ML projects can be seamlessly connected to your end user business applications like Tableau and Power BI. Now, what is Dataiku? Well, it's the centralized analytics workbench that lets you collaborate with others regardless of their technical skill. And that really means a business analyst with no coding knowledge can collaborate with data engineers writing SQL and Python, or anyone in between, all on the same project. Now, what does it look like to collaborate on a project? Well, what you see here is called the flow. And this is the window in Dataiku that lets you connect data, perform your data preparation and transformation steps, build and deploy machine learning models, all in one visual interface that anyone can understand. So if you missed one of the previous webinars, we talked a bit about bringing in data. And so what you see, those blue squares are your data sets. And then what we're going to be talking about today are, you see those yellow circles, those are the recipes that perform your data transformations and processing. And then finally, Dataiku is also cloud agnostic. So it can be deployed across all your major cloud providers like Azure and AWS, and integrates connections from any data source, but most popularly Lakehouse architectures like Databricks and Snowflakes. Now, what are recipes? Well, they are the part of the flow that contain all the transformation steps and processing logic that act on a data set and connect one data set, the input, to the output data set. So they keep the processing separate. You can also change the type of storage of your data and where the data is coming from without changing the actual processing and underlying transformations that you're performing in your project. And they also make it very easy to follow the lineage and visualize a project, unlike maybe a large cluttered notebook that's hard to navigate and go through. Now, what are the different types of recipes? Well, today we're going to look at visual code and LLM recipes. There's also plugin recipes. So starting off with visual recipes, these accomplish the most common data transformation operations, and they're all predefined in a graphical user interface that's easy to use and requires no code. So some popular examples, and the ones we'll go through today, are prepare recipes, a join recipe, group, and pivot recipe. Now, if you can't find your particular transformation or you just want to code, there are code recipes. And these have also, instead of having a predefined visual recipe, you open one of these up and there is a blank script where you can write in all your popular languages like Python, R, SQL, Shell, and then all the Spark counterparts of those. Then there's also LLM recipes. So these are visual recipes that leverage LLMs to accomplish tasks like summarizing text or performing sentiment analysis or emotion analysis. And then finally, plugin recipes. These are a fantastic way for a Dataiku developer to extend the native capabilities of their code recipes. You can take a previously built code recipe and build a graphical user interface wrapper on top of that, and then package that up into a plugin that makes it really easy to reuse across different instances or projects in Dataiku. So the first recipe we're going to delve into is the prepare recipe. And like the name suggests, this recipe enables all your data preparation and cleaning steps. So there are over 90 data processors built in, and those are the different types of transformations and steps that you can perform row-wise or column-wise to complete your data cleansing. And if there isn't exactly what you're looking for or you're having trouble navigating the processor's library, there is an AI assistance feature that will help auto-suggest and build the transformation steps for you. Or you can write your custom transformation step as a code data recipe or data processor in Python. I'll jump into the platform to show you what that looks like. If we go to one of these demos and it loads, we can jump into a prepare recipe here. And so very easy to use and navigate interface. We have our data here. If you click on a column, the prepare recipe will automatically suggest some transformations to perform based on the inferred data meaning of the column. Or we can add our transformation steps over here. So a few really simple transformations like parsing a date. There's a data processor to convert a currency column from one type of currency to another. And you can even do text processing with regular expressions. Then there's many more. If you want to look through the complete processor's library, you can add a step that gets pulled up. And there are tons of processors for processing, data cleaning, working with strings or numbers, geography, and more. Now, the join recipe. This is where you can take two or more of your data sets and join them together on a common field. And the join recipe supports all the standard types of joins that maybe you've seen and is made possible by a SQL query. So you can do your different types of joins like a left join, inner join, right join, anti, cross join, and there's even some advanced join options. Additionally, there's another recipe that we won't talk about today. When we go into our advanced data processing, there's a recipe for doing geo joins and working with geographic data sets and bringing those together as well, which is really cool. So we'll look at what this looks like. So here we have 3 data sets. This is the data isn't super important here. We're just going to focus on the recipe, but we're working with transaction and merchant type data. We look at the join recipe. It's very easy. We're taking the TX data set. We're doing a left join onto it with the cards prepared data set that is indicated here. And then we're also doing a left join of the merchant's data set onto the TX data set indicated here. Now you can change easily the type of join that you're doing with this dropdown. You can take it instead doing a left join onto TX. I could switch this to do a right join onto merchants. And then if you wanted to add data sets to join with any one of these data sets already in your recipe, there's a dropdown for that. Of course, there's additional settings, which we'll let you explore, but lots to do here. Now, the group recipe. This is the recipe that's going to let you group data by a specific attribute called the group key in Dataiku, and then easily compute the different per field aggregations on your remaining data. The group recipe also makes grouping by more than one key possible, and my favorite feature of this recipe is how simple it is to do more than one aggregation per field. So there are options like doing distinct, min, max aggregation, or looking at the average, mean, sum, more. And you can select as many of those aggregations per each field, and you'll see those as different outputs in your, as a new column in your output data set. So let's just look at what this looks like. We go over to another project. Here we have a group recipe, and I selected one group key, but I could easily add another group key. So it would group on two columns, and then we can also compute a count for each group, and that is added as a output here. We could also optionally remove that count. That's just counting how many rows are in each grouping. And then for the aggregations, this is where we have all our remaining columns of our data set, and we can select which aggregations we want to include. When you're working with strings or non-numerical data, just categorical data, there are also options like first, last, or concatenating all the values into one string. Now, the last visual recipe that we'll look into is the pivot recipe. And I'm sure most of you have maybe made pivot tables before, probably in Excel. Well, it's even easier in Dataiku. And one thing I really love about this recipe is the explainability and examples. So if you look here in the recipe, there's this examples page, and pivot tables can be kind of confusing the first few times you work with them. But I think this built-in panel that shows you exactly what you're going to get when you do your pivot tables is a really powerful and unique feature that you really only see in a platform like Dataiku that makes it easy to use for anyone. Now let's get into the code recipes. And these are a great option for the more complex types of data transformations or processing that you can't get done with a visual recipe. Or if you're a developer and simply prefer to write projects in code, whatever the reason, these code recipes make scripting in an analytics project so much fun. So if you're a data practitioner like myself, then you know the struggles of working in a large code notebook or trying to modularize a large program into many separate scripts just to do something simple like data prep or linear regression. And using the code recipes just makes it so easy to build a large data pipeline in code. For example, there's no more need to search for that right chunk of code to find out where one data set is coming from. All the inputs and outputs of a code recipe are always predefined and showed in the left panel in a code recipe. So that left panel is here, and this is where you define your inputs and outputs. And then you also read those inputs as code. This is a Python recipe, for example. And then at the end of doing all your transformations, you write to that output data set defined. And of course, Dataiku supports many languages. So we already talked about Python, R, and SQL. You can also use Shell or all the different Spark options, so Spark SQL, PySpark, for distributed computing. Okay, now on to the LLM recipes. The first one is the prompt recipe, and this lets you run any kind of custom prompt against your data set. So in the recipe, you can provide a text column or other metadata columns for context, and the recipe will execute the prompt against each row in your data set. And it's easy to change the LLM settings, such as the temperature or max output tokens. So we'll jump into Dataiku and show you what this looks like. So here we have a prompt recipe. We'll just double click into it, and I've already pre-written a prompt here, but this is where you first define which LLM the prompt recipe will use, and then you can write your prompt. You can give additional prompt inputs. So this could be just one text column. You could also add any number of additional columns. They could be numerical, categorical, really anything. And then you can also provide examples for one-shot or few-shot learning that will just improve the output of your prompt. And then this is where you have all the different types of LLM completion settings. Talked about temperature, number of output tokens. And one thing that's really cool is JSON mode. So in your prompt, if you specify that the LLM should output in a JSON format, and you select JSON mode, Dataiku will do that check for you, that the output of the LLM is actually in JSON format. If not, it's going to throw you a warning or error, depending on how you choose to handle that. This is the classify text recipe. And basically how this works is there's a predefined prompt template for each specific task that the recipe can perform. Now, what are those tasks? Well, with the classify text recipe, you can easily leverage an LLM to perform analyses like sentiment analysis, emotion analysis, or even do your own categorical analysis with other categories that you've defined. We'll take a look at one of those recipes. I apologize, my Dataiku instance is being very slow today. We'll have this double checked for the next webinar. There we go. So here we have our classified text recipe, and it's very easy to use. There's only 4 recipe settings. We choose our LLM, the input column, and for this task, we're doing sentiment analysis. So we can actually look at the prompt and what it's doing here. And this is the prompt that's pre-configured. I could actually convert it into a prompt recipe if I want to modify and change how this works. But basically, the output of this sentiment analysis will be to classify each text as positive, negative, or neutral. And there's also some examples to help guide the LLM to that output. Now, the last recipe that we're going to cover today is the embed recipe. And this is a recipe that's going to let you build a vector store database. This is a type of database that, when working with text data, you can provide to a LLM chatbot in a retrieval augmented generation or RAG configuration. So this is like giving a librarian to your chatbot. Essentially, you can embed text, which is just transforming it into the data type that the LLM can better understand and search for. And when you ask a question, the LLM kind of like asks a librarian the embedded data set to go fetch the information. And this is the type of data set you can ask, you can search your data for. And there are many settings. You can include additional metadata, so not only the one text column to embed. You can perform document or text splitting, chunking. You can define a maximum number of records to include in your embedded vector store. And there's also the different embedding settings like choosing the embedding LLM or the type of vector store to embed your data into. And all the popular vector stores are in Dataiku, for example, Feist Data Store, ChromaDB, or Pinecone, and there's a few more options as well. So that is all for the content of the webinar. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I'm going to hand it off to Jerry, who's going to go through the Q&A or chat. If you have any questions, now is the time. We'll get to them and hopefully give you an answer.
Yep. So if there are any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. I'll relay them to Ethan and he'll be able to answer them.
Yeah, the Q&A is just loading on my end. Don't see anything in the chat right now. Doesn't look like there are any questions coming in. So if you have any questions in the future, always feel free to. Oh. Awesome. Okay.
Emery's asking for the recipes. Is there a max size of tools or complexity?
A max size of tools or complexity?
Maximum number, I guess. Yeah.
So like the maximum number of recipes you could use in a project? No, really. The Dataiku instance is very scalable. So, the larger your project is, the more compute resources you can kind of dedicate to a project or your instance, and it's really limitless. You can have in a project one recipe, no recipes, or hundreds. It's really just depending on your data needs and the particular project you're doing.
Awesome. And then see another question from Boyang. What are some resources to learn Dataiku?
That is an awesome question. I would really suggest the Dataiku Academy. So I can show you what that looks like if I open up the Dataiku Academy. It's just at academy.dataiku.com. There are quick start lessons, learning paths, certifications, and then release highlights. One thing I would suggest going through is the different learning paths, depending on what kind of user of Dataiku you'll be. Everyone could probably start with a core designer. This is just your first steps with Dataiku and gives you a basic overview of the platform. You go into different interface, visual recipes, how to collaborate, and then additionally, you can go into SQL or geospatial analytics. And then from there, you can do the advanced designer path. If you're into machine learning and you're a data scientist, the ML practitioner and Gen AI practitioner and ML ops practitioners are great learning paths. And then if you're someone who's coding and you want to maybe build plugins or build solutions on Dataiku, then the developer pathway is great. And all of these learning paths lead to certifications. There's an exam you can do at the end of each and every one of them.
Awesome, thanks.
No problem. And then also I'll just say at Compass too, that's more for the individual learning. For companies and enterprises, you can view on our website, compassdata.ca. We also have Dataiku trainings available for enterprise.
Yep, that's definitely good to know.
Our website is compassdata.ca. And then the Dataiku one is academy.dataiku.ca or .com actually. Putting those both in the chat. So I think that's all for the questions, and we're almost at our 30 minutes. I'll just flash this on screen, the upcoming webinar calendar. So this was the third webinar in our series of, I believe we're at 18 webinars now, running from April to June. So the next one is happening on Thursday, where we're actually going to do a 60-minute demo of building your first AI project. And then we have some really awesome topics after that, like advanced data processing, coding in Dataiku. Then we go into machine learning, working with Gen AI, building Gen AI apps, and more like enterprise management, governance. And then in June, we're looking at automation deployment, API integration, operationalizing AI with Dataiku. That is another 60-minute demo that's going to be very exciting. And then last up, we have our digital transformation success stories. So that is all for today. Thank you all for watching, and we hope to see you at the next webinar.